Welcome back. You're watching One on One. We're speaking with renowned evolutionary biologist and best-selling author, Professor Richard Dawkins. Now, your prominence came really with your first book, The Selfish Gene, in 1976, which I gather you really started writing in 1974 when the power cut started.
It was, yes.
Couldn't do your laboratory work.
This was the time of Edward Heath and the Winter of Discontent, or I forget what it was called, and there was a 3-day week, and power cuts were happening all the time, so I couldn't do my research, which involved electric apparatus, and so I switched to writing a book. And then unfortunately the power came on again, and so I stopped writing the book until 1976.
Huge bestseller. Now, in that book, you promote the idea of, which was very much around the idea of gene-controlled, gene-centered view of evolution, and it made that idea popular. You introduced the term meme, which to the public, which I guess is a unit of cultural ideas, symbols, or practices, like a cultural gene almost.
Yes, this was a bit of an afterthought at the end of the book, because most of the book is about the gene as the unit of natural selection. Not the gene as a determinant of behavior, but the gene as the unit of natural selection, the thing that survives or doesn't survive in natural selection. And I just wanted at the end of the book to downplay the gene and say that, in principle, a Darwinian process could come about if there were any sort of self-replicating entity. The gene is one such self-replicating entity, and a very powerful one, but anything else would do. The meme was a possible alternative, a unit of cultural inheritance. If something is copied from one brain to another, you whistle a tune, and somebody else picks up the tune and whistles it, and then somebody else picks up the tune and whistles it. That's like a gene being passed from parent to child to grandchild. It's horizontal transfer, it's not longitudinal down the generations, but it's similar. And that's a meme, simply because it is accurately copied. And if it's accurately copied, it potentially could be subject to natural selection. That was the point I was making.
And presumably religion comes under that category of meme, does it?
Well, yes, because religious ideas are copied from brain to brain, both horizontally from, say, evangelist to flock, to people that they preach to, and down the generations from parent to child to grandchild. So children learn from their parents or learn from their school religious ideas which have no basis in fact, but which simply pass down the generations because they pass. They're just copied, just like genes. And so I think religious ideas are a good example of that, yes.
Now, you had some time in America at the University of California, Berkeley, when the Vietnam War was very much a topic of discussion, and students and the faculties were often out against it. And you were actually quite active in the demonstration.
Well, yes, within reason. I mean, my first wife, Marion, and I we were foreigners. I mean, we had no business to actually take too much part in political activities, but we did a certain amount. We joined in demonstrations and things like that, yes.
And it's interesting because a little bit more of activism that you've taken up in more recent years was in 2008 you officially supported Britain's first atheism campaign, or atheist campaign, or at least the advertising initiative, the Atheist Bus.
Oh, the bus, oh yes. Well, that was a bit of fun, and I actually rather enjoyed myself afterwards by writing a P.G. Wodehouse, Jeeves Wooster parody about the buses, about Bertie Wooster asking Jeeves what these buses mean. So it was sort of comedy in a way, but it was rather a successful campaign. It was very, what's the word, tactfully worded. It says there's probably no God. It wasn't one there's absolutely no God, probably no God, which I thought at the time it was a bit weak, but with hindsight I think it's rather witty, really. It gets people talking. You know, what do you mean probably?
Is there any price to pay for being so vocal on an issue that so many people are so sensitive to? I mean, is it something that can break friendships? And I know you were married a couple of times. Was there anything of that fact?
Oh, no, nothing like that. No, never broken a friendship over it, but I have certainly heard plenty of real sad stories from people, especially in America, where it has broken friendships and even broken families. I mean, that's really tragic to lose a family. And I fear it happens in the Islamic world in a big way as well.
Now, it's interesting, your third wife, Lala, is very much a collaborator with you on your books and projects as well, and she contributes a lot, has been successful in her own right in a number.
Very much so, yes.
And I wonder, in that sense, is there like a harmony that she shares your views? Does that make it easier when someone shares such strong views on something?
Oh, of course, yes. I mean, it would be really quite difficult, I think, to be I mean, religion is important enough that it would be difficult to be married to somebody of diametrically opposed religious views. I mean, that just goes to show how all-pervasive religious opinions are. You might think it should be possible to, to sort of argue out your differences and see where the evidence lies and come to a consensus. But where religious views are concerned, evidence doesn't actually count for all that much, and so that does make it difficult.
And of course, parents have a huge issue with how to bring up their children. You get that in sort of inter-religious marriages and so on. In your case, when you got your daughter Juliet was going through a schooling that is predominantly Christian, for example, was there an issue of trying to explain it? How did you want to bring her up?
Well, for most of the period of her upbringing, I was separated from her mother, and so I didn't have that much control over it. I wrote her an open letter when she was 10 not about religion specifically, but about critical thinking, about evidence and the importance of evidence as opposed to other ways in which you might think you learn things. And but we didn't have discussions. We didn't have conversations about religion. I think really hardly at all.
You've had incredible success with your books, and they've been huge bestsellers. I mean, those punctuations apart, what do you see as your defining moments?
I suppose that of all my books, The Extended Phenotype is the one that I regard as my main contribution to science. But I think several of my books, I'd like to think, have changed the way people think. And not just lay people, but in some cases, professional colleagues as well.
And you are particularly concerned with young people not getting the wrong idea, not getting issues such as evolution screened away from them, which has been happening in some places where they've been dropping the discussion on it.
Yes, it has, and I do feel very disturbed about that. I, on the other hand, want to be very clear that I don't want to indoctrinate children. I want to encourage children to think for themselves, to look at the evidence, evaluate the evidence, and learn how to evaluate it critically. And rather than tell children, this is what you must think, you must never do that. You say, this is how you ought to think. Think critically, look at the evidence.
So in 2006, you set up the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science. What was the main aim of that?
Right, it's actually two foundations, one in Britain and one in America, with the same trustees and the same aims. It's the aim of both is to promote reason and science educationally in the form of research. We have a very flourishing website, richarddawkins.net, which is run from California, and that, I don't know whether you've looked at it, but it has a sort of lively buzz about it. I mean, there are lots of conversations going on, some of them quite heated. So it's a place where people go to argue, to think, to discuss, and I like to think that it has a beneficial effect. And of course, it also helps to promote books about science and reason, and films, plenty of videos. We produce lots of videos, which are partly my videos, partly videos of other scientists, filmed by Josh Timonen, who is the man who runs the website and runs the filming operation. He's a very skilled and talented filmmaker, and we've now got quite a little portfolio of videos of scientists, either me interviewing scientists or lectures by scientists, which we sell for cost price, more or less. I mean, we don't make a profit. The idea is to try to spread science and reason.
And you're a very avid adopter of technology too. You're very active with the website and the interactive side, the modern technology. Has that been I mean, what sort of vehicle has that been for you for keeping in touch with people very keen to find out more about?
Well, I think the internet is a very important vehicle, and I do think also it's a very important way in which information and thought, indeed, can spread to parts of the world which don't have the same political freedoms as other parts. I mean, there are places that I suspect only the internet can reach, and it may be having a very important political and social effect.
Now, you're still very active. Do you see a time where you would sit back and maybe take up some of those hobbies that have been on hold, or is there anything you sort of wanted to do that the work has really got in the way of?
Not really, no. I can't quite imagine. I mean, obviously, old age comes to all of us sooner or later, and I suppose I will run out of steam, but I don't actually have You know, I don't have an ambition to take up stamp collecting or anything like that, no.
But you're enjoying the pace then?
Yes, it's a fairly hectic pace still, I must say.
How would you like to be remembered? What would you like your legacy to be?
I suppose as somebody who tried to understand and tried to help other people to understand the really deep questions about existence. I can't claim to have contributed to answering them in a big way, but I think I can claim to have contributed to helping other people to understand what has been discovered throughout the history of science.
Professor Richard Dawkins, more power to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much indeed.